Welcome. We'll get started in just a minute as we give folks a few more moments to join. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shannon Serrato, and I'm the Director of Engagement here at Cradle-to-Career. We are so glad to have you all with us today. And before we jump into today's session, I want to go over a bit of housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the Cradle-to-Career YouTube page, as well as posted to the Cradle-to-Career site under our Get Involved page, meetings and community conversations in the coming days. Today's meeting is closed caption enabled. To turn on captions, click the three dots to the far right bottom of your screen and select Captions. You can also select your preferred language by launching the CC button at the bottom of your screen. We're also glad to once again have Spanish interpretation services offered for today's session, with a big thanks to Fabiola Valencia for joining us this afternoon. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Fabiola for a few instructions on how to enable interpretation for today's session.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Fabiola. Voy a ser una de las intérpretes para ustedes el día de hoy. Queremos darle las gracias a todos por estar aquí presente y nomás queremos hacerles saber de acá a continuación, si gustan escuchar, perdón, esta grabación o esta junta en español, por favor, vean la pantalla de abajo. Va a estar un glóbulo terráqueo donde ustedes van a poder seleccionar su idioma de interpretación, ya sea en español o dice Spanish. Una vez de que ustedes seleccionen el idioma, ustedes me van a poder escuchar a mí interpretar del inglés al español. Gracias. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Fabiola. So with that, you're welcome to
Thank you.
ask any questions you may have in the chat or in Q&A at any point today. And we'll also allow folks to ask their questions live during the Q&A portion of today's community conversation. And on that note, I want to highlight that we'll be utilizing the community guidelines that we created with you all to guide today's meeting. We want to foster a brave and respectful shared space, and we appreciate your commitment to creating community together today. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to get to know a little bit about each other. So about C2C, the California Cradle-to-Career Data System was named in state legislation to be California's source of actionable data and research on education, economic, and health outcomes for individuals, families, and communities. C2C has been envisioned to be the most inclusive data system of its kind in the nation, and we employ a three-pronged approach of community engagement to inform the development, interpretation, and awareness building about the data system. We're scaling tools to support college planning and transition, and we're working to build an analytical data set on education and job outcomes. And for more information, we have a handy one-pager available on the C2C website, available at the bit.ly below, C2C-1_pager. Next slide, please. So we've shared plenty about us, and now it's time to hear from you. As always, we want to get to know who's in the virtual room with us today. So I'm going to ask some questions, and I invite you all to share your answers into the chat. So first set of questions. Please share your name, organization, and where you're joining from today. Novair Lee from San Bernardino City. Thank you for joining us. Got Sarah Lillis with Teach Plus. Oh, coming in fast. Tammy Jackson, Senior College. Whoa, you guys, there's so much coming out. Tamara Savage, Roy Tonglava, nice to meet you or see you again. We've got Gemma Groover with Sacramento. We've got Ludovica Ghazi with Memphis, Tennessee, actually based in the UK. I think you may get the award for furthest away today, so congratulations for that. We've got Alexis Takagi. Thank you for joining us today, Alexis, CTC Advisory Board member. We're very glad to be in community with you. Ben Phils with Possibility Lab. Thank you as always for joining us. Don Kepke with Sacramento on behalf of the California Council of Adult Education. Alex Knobottom, Regional K-16 Collaborative in Sacramento. Marcia Johnson, Campaign for College Opportunity in Sacramento. We've also got Alex Ruiz, Inland Regional K-16 Education Collaborative. William Mock, Students Rising Above from San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope I got to everybody, but again, please continue to drop where you're joining from in the chat. We're going to move on to the second question. Is this your first community conversation? If not, let us know how many you joined. And also, what are you most looking forward to today? Says we're first session looking forward to learning about this initiative. Tamara Savage says this is my first time looking to learn about C2C. William Mock also says this is your first community conversation. Thank you all for joining us for the first time. Thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate the opportunity to meet you all. Karen also says this is her first session and you look forward to learning. We look forward to learning with you all today. Noah Vera says, I've attended multiple C2C meetings since the public rollout. Yes, you're a very familiar name and we appreciate your community as always. Adam says, first timer looking forward to hopefully sharing how students can increase their college readiness through CLEP exams. Great. Thank you for sharing the last question, a fun one. We've just went through our solar eclipse together. March Madness finals are over, which people take very seriously. So I want to know, what's your favorite unofficial holiday? What's something that you would take the day off for that others may not? While folks take a moment to think about this, I will share mine. I always attend the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco's Bouquet d'Art Festival. That's where local florists reimagine works of art throughout the museum using florals and foliage, and it's my most favorite time of the year, and 100% will be taking the day off for that, so look forward to that soon. Ben Phil's Pliny the Younger release day. I know a lot of people who enjoy that as well. Sharon Harvey says, first session, I want to learn about how we can contribute data to the C2C. And favorite day, the day after Super Bowl. I hear you on that one. Adam says, Boys and Girls Club mock interview volunteering. That's really nice. Steve Johnson, Art Alive at the San Diego Museum of Arts. Same floral artwork. Steph, apologies. And I worked at the San Diego Museum of Art. I interned there back in the college days, so that's nice to hear. Let's see. Amanda says, I would love to take work for the day after Halloween. And Karen says, Midsummer, beautiful Swedish festival celebrating summer. Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. It's really nice to just be in community with you all and get to know who's joining us today. So I really appreciate you sharing. Next slide, please. All right. So we've got a full day ahead of us, and we really appreciate you joining. Today's conversation will focus on the advisory board proposal process and what it means for the public. But we'll kick off today with a few C2C updates that we're excited to share. And following the informational portion of today's community conversation, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A before we close. Next slide, please. So before we dive into today's in-depth overview of the advisory board proposal process, I wanted to give you all a few updates on progress made at C2C since it's been a while since we've been in virtual community with you all. We're going to kick off today's update with a celebration. I'm pleased to share that last month, C2C's data infrastructure team received a California CIO Academy Award for the work that they've done coordinating across data partners to achieve the historic integration of more than 1 billion data points in October of 2023. This work was a crucial early milestone in California's efforts to build an inclusive and ambitious state longitudinal data system. Data ingestion and integration is the first major data infrastructure milestone, and this integration is a reflection on both the technical skill and innovative approach of the team, as well as the collaborative nature of our work with C2C's data partners. And to that end, I'm also happy to share that following this monumental milestone, we've now entered steady state, receiving our second submission of data from C2C's data providers at the end of last month, March, for release 1.1. This progress opens the door for C2C to integrate data and will provide the public, researchers, and lawmakers insights that could improve education and the quality of life for millions of Californians. In other exciting news, and also at the end of March, a joint op-ed from C2C's Executive Director Mary Ann Bates, California Senator John Laird, and Assemblymember Jackie Irwin, also C2C governing board members, published an op-ed in EdSource on the build of the state's first longitudinal data system. The op-ed focuses on how the data system will connect the dots from early education to the workforce, empowering Californians to make informed decisions
Disculpen, me
about their
sigue
life.
votando. I keep getting booted out. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Fabiola.
Queremos, ¿verdad?
One second. All right. Mercury's in retrograde, everyone. Please bear with us. We're having some communications issues. All right. Thank you, Fabiola, for that. I hope you're back in the room. And with that, we will move on. So as we shared during our last community conversation together, we developed plans to meet people where they are, bringing our conversations to various regions across the state of California to build awareness of the data system and get feedback on our planned data dashboards. We implemented the in-person community conversations, and we thank the many of you who joined us. I see very many familiar names joining this call today, so we really appreciate you engaging with us and all the work that you've done to help us get to where we are. We still plan to hold sessions this year in Southern California, the San Joaquin Valley, and Central Valley, so stay tuned as we share more information on that. And to close, I want to let you all know that we are still hiring. We are growing, and we are looking for a C2C's first Chief Information Security Officer, Cloud Architect, and Senior Data Engineer. If you or someone you may know is interested, please visit c2c.ca.gov/careers to learn more. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to C2C's Chief of Strategic Partnerships and Initiatives, Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, who will kick off our discussion today on the advisory board proposal process and what it means for the public. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mary Kate.
Hi, good morning. Afternoon, I guess I should say. Thanks so much, Shannon. Thanks for my introduction. That's true. My name is Mary Kate Cruz-Jones, and I am the Chief of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships here at C2C. The thought for today is that I'd walk us through the 2024 proposal process, timeline, form, and rubric. You'll notice on this slide, there's a wonderful graphic. So thanks, Brittany, who's from the C2C team who developed this. This is her brainchild to visually demonstrate a lot of what we'll be talking through today. So it's worth noting that there's been a decent amount of changes to this process since last year when we did this process for the first time. And I want to highlight that this came as a result of the feedback that we received from both advisory board members as well as the public. So thank you so much if you played a role in that and sharing with the office and our governing board members, things that were working or were not working or could have worked better. So we heard you, and we're implementing a lot of that feedback in this year's process. If worth noting, the governing board adopted these changes at our February 2024 governing board meeting. So effective this year, the process will be open to the public, whereas last year it was restricted just to advisory board members. So 32 members, either on data and tools or community engagement. This refined approach aims to foster inclusivity, responsiveness, and effectiveness in generating equitable and quality recommendations that reflect a diverse array of stakeholders. I just noted some of our C2C values, so we are very, very excited to be rolling out this new process. It's a new process. It's a bit complex. There's a lot of nuances, and so we're just going to kind of talk through this together. So this graphic has been added to our governance manual, again, to try and provide some clarity to this complex process and timeline. And I'm going to now voice over some parts of the process overall and provide you all with a big picture. So right now, we're in the first blue pre-meeting section of this graphic. So toward the bottom on the left-hand. Yes, thank you. Very helpful cursing. That's not how I say that, but hopefully it gave you all a giggle. we're right there in the timeline, and members of the public are able to submit either data and tools or community engagement proposal forms at this time. So the forms are live on the C2C website, and later on at the end of my presentation, I'm going to be walking you through our C2C website so you could see where our resources are housed, and you could find all this information on your own later today, should you want to. I do want to highlight forms are due by June 21st. I'm going to say that a few different times today, just let it sink in, but that's when they're due, not after the fact. At the summer advisory board meeting, so now we're moving to the next purple circle. That will be held on July 10th. Our advisory board members will be given time to publicly discuss the ideation of recommendations received from the public. So the office will gather everything that we got from the public, we'll house it all on the website, and then our advisory board members will have a chance to discuss on July 10th. Please tune into that meeting. Hopefully we'll see some more familiar names. After this advisory board meeting, that's going to happen over the summer, both data and tools and community engagement advisory board members will have their chance to submit their proposal forms. And they have a few different options that are available to them. They can submit their own idea, or they can sponsor one of the ideas that maybe hopefully somebody on this call will present. So they could sponsor any public form that we receive, or they can maybe take a third option, which is tinker with something that was previously submitted or submitted by the public and resubmit that idea. So they have a few different options available to them. And then the office, again, will collect all of these proposals. They'll be housed on the website. And then if we receive more than 3 proposals for either advisory board, so remember, data and tools has its own process and community engagement has its own process. If we receive more than 3 for one advisory board, it will start up this process that's a pre-meeting survey, and that will allow members to prioritize only 3 meetings that they'll see in their fall meeting. Then we get to the fall advisory board meetings, which will happen in October. And up to, as I just mentioned, up to 3 of those proposals that members prioritized will be heard in that meeting. And what members will decide that day after hearing more about these proposals is they'll determine if they want to see the proposal advance to a feasibility study. And my colleague here today, David, will be talking to you more about what the feasibility study is and looks like. If you were able to tune in on either March 5th or March 20th, you maybe heard, we did our first round of feasibility studies, so this might feel familiar to you, but we'll talk through it more later today. Then let's fast forward to the spring meeting, which this year, as I just mentioned, happened in March. Those dates aren't set yet. We'll probably figure out when those dates will happen in July when our advisory boards meet again. But in spring, this is important because we'll find out the results of those feasibility studies. So the office over the winter months will conduct a feasibility study and then share those findings with the advisory boards. The important thing about the spring meeting is after hearing the results of those studies, then our advisory boards will determine if the proposals should be advanced to the governing board for recommendation. Okay, so that's a big digest of what we just talked about. Let's look a little bit more into the background. So if we could see the next slide here. So I did just mention a few moments ago with a lot of details that I provided that we do have 2 advisory boards. So one is community engagement, and then the other is data and tools. Both advisory boards have their own authority and they have their own scope, which is noted for you here on this slide. Now, the reason why this is so important is because between their authority and their scope, they have 2 different charges and 2 different focuses. And if you notice on our proposal forms, community engagement proposals relate to feedback loops with data users, evidence-based decision-making and analytical capacity, or equitable access to actionable information. Whereas data and tools proposals relate to changes to practical tools for students, or adding data points not available through the P20W dataset, or adjusting, including the removal of the existing P20W data points. So 2 separate scopes, 2 separate authorities, And you'll notice, again, as I just mentioned, at the top of these proposal forms, these bullet points are laid out for you, and both forms are rooted in those advisory board scopes. Okay, let's take a look at the timeline now, which is highlighted on our next slide. Fabulous. So this is just kind of a quick snapshot of things that I've already talked to you about. This slide is really centered around the public meetings, since that's when our advisory boards do a lot of their work. It's going to start in the summer. So we're moving forward a little bit. What I want to voice over is right now, the part of the process that we're in is in that pre-meeting blue section. So if you, a member of the public, would like to submit your form, you still have time to do so. And that deadline is June 21st. You can email them to info@c2c.ca.gov. That's an important place. That's how we will get it. So if you create the form, ensure you email it, because that's the only way it will be effective. Sorry, poor humor, but hopefully you're giggling to yourself. Clearly I am. All right, so then the next time, and this is that first box in blue, on July 10th, that's when our joint advisory boards will meet. So community engagement, data and tools, all of those folks will be in one room, again, on July 10th for their summer meeting. This meeting is important because it gives members the opportunity to ask questions of data providers. And the reason why we do this is because they're starting to think about what proposal forms they'd want to submit. So it gives them time to engage with the office and data providers to get any questions answered and asked. And then a new thing that we're trying out this year is we're giving our members space to publicly talk about the public proposals that we received. Advisory board member proposals are due on July 24th. So it's giving them some time after that summer meeting to start to turn in their proposal. Again, that's July 24th. And as I mentioned, they could submit their own proposal. They could sponsor a proposal form that was received over the summer by the public, or they can further refine concepts from a form that was previously submitted. In September, that's when, if more than 3 proposals were submitted for either community engagement or data and tools, a pre-meeting survey will be sent out to our advisory board members to have them prioritize those proposals. And then in October, when advisory boards meet again, the 3 proposals will be discussed, and then they'll determine whether it should go to a feasibility study. And then again, rounding this process out in the spring, will they hear the results of the feasibility study and then determine if it should go to the advisory board for consideration. And as I've mentioned before, we'll have more light into what 2025 dates will look like. Hopefully come our July 10 advisory boards meeting, and members will vote on when they want to convene again. So looking into the 2024 proposal form, which is our next slide, I want to kind of dig into what this form is. And again, at the end of this presentation, I'll screen share so you can see how things are live on the website. As a reminder, there's one form for community engagement, and there's another form for data and tools, right? We've gone over the scope and the authority, so hopefully it makes sense to you why we have 2 separate forms, because we have 2 separate advisory boards and they do different things. Although there are 2 different forms, at the beginning of each form, we ask that you come up with a proposal title. Now, I want to be specific here. Please note that the title is limited to 50 characters, because when we receive your form, we're going to put it up on the C2C website, and we're going to use that title that you gave us. But if your title's too long, we can't put the whole thing. So just please pay attention to this as you're thinking and developing and editing, and we really appreciate it. The next section is the nature of the proposal. So I'd like to highlight that data and tools, that form is broken down into 2 separate sections. So depending on the type of proposal that you're submitting. The next 3 bullet points really cut to the core of the proposal. And that has to do with the action that's requesting, the impetus for the proposal, the beneficiaries of the proposal, so who you think will benefit if this proposal is implemented, and then the connection of the proposal to C2C's mission and vision, right? So really this is going to breathe life into your proposal. And I ask if I'll frame it this way. If I were the person completing the form, how I would spend my time is really in this section of the application, because this is what's going to give it importance. So I would try and make this as clear as possible, because it's really the heart of the application. So if you think about further down the line, an advisory board member reading your proposal form, this is probably the part that's going to speak to them. And so really being as clear, concise, and highlighting that importance, you may have a better shot of your proposal being adopted by an advisory board member. The last bullet point here is helpful for the office to understand who you envision to implement this process. Again, we've talked about the fact that once the proposals go through the fall meeting, the office has to do a feasibility study. So kind of understanding from you who you think would implement it is just a helpful starting point. And I'd like to note that last year was the first year that the office implemented this process. I know this is how I kind of started out this whole conversation. We learned a lot together. And so again, we're just very happy for our member input and for the public. We're going to try a few things out this year, and we might need to recalibrate next year, but it's good to kind of gauge what works, what doesn't work. And so thank you for your partnership and trying out these new ideas with us. And that's kind of where some of these new updates came from, and some of the these points that I've just highlighted. So taking a look at, that's the proposal form. The next piece I'd like to talk through is the rubric. And you as a member of the public won't have to use the rubric, but the reason why the rubric is important is I keep talking about this pre-meeting survey, right? So our members will have to vote, they'll have to prioritize. If they get a lot of proposals, I don't know, let's say 15, that feels like a lot. They'll have to figure out of those 15, which 3 need to advance. Well, this rubric is a tool in their toolbox. When they go to vote, they're gonna, use the point system, and that's how they're gonna prioritize which proposals should go to that fall meeting. Our advisory board members discuss the rubric form at their March meetings, and we largely kept the form the same, but there was a new criteria that was added, and that was likelihood of success. And this, again, was an idea that was implemented as a result of the office having the lived experience of implementing the process, right? So a large part of these proposals is, right, the next stage of it is the feasibility study. So it's great if these proposals are feasible and if they could be enacted. And so kind of adding this criteria helps our members think about that as they're prioritizing. Okay. So the next slide we're going to take a look at is the public proposal process. So I've mentioned it several times today. Again, this is important for you all. Your proposals are due by the 21st. And again, I know Angelique, thank you very much. Put that very important email in the chat. That info@C2C is where you're going to want to send it to. I do ask that proposals are submitted by 5 p.m. office hours. So please just set a reminder for yourself, put that tickler on your calendar, 5 p.m. on June 21st. And again, if it's in late, it will not be considered. So you could hold on to that for 2025. All proposals, as I've mentioned, will be housed in the proposal archive, which will be kept in perpetuity on the C2C website. And I'm going to walk you through where you can find that in a moment here. I would also like folks to remember this really important part of this process. So you all may turn in your proposals, but it's an advisory board member that has to sponsor it. And if an advisory board member sponsors it, then that's what will continue the proposal on in the process. And advisory board member proposals, those submissions are due by July 24th. So that's kind of the connection to the second bullet point there. Now, the last piece before I start to share my screen that I want to highlight are just some resources available to you, related resources. So this next slide does a good job of listing them out. What we see here are the governance manual. I just want to remind folks that the governance manual is truly what lays out the procedures and the parameters for this process. So that's what the office goes by. It's pretty detailed, but in case you want to learn more, you have this wonderful resource at your disposal. So please feel free to consult it. The web page that I'll showcase in a moment is also a super good resource for you because it will provide an overview of the process. Should you forget anything I've mentioned today, you always have that there for you. It will have the archive of past proposals, so everything that we got in our first proposal season, as well as all those wonderful resources. So the forms, the rubrics, timelines, all that good stuff. And then if you want any additional information about our plan dashboards or data points submitted by data providers, we do have those links listed for you here. If you are thinking about submitting a data and tools proposal, those resources will be very helpful for you. It's always a good look to see, always a good idea to look and see what's already out there, what's planned on being implemented. Because maybe your idea is something that we're already working on. So I would strongly recommend you to take a look at that, just maybe as your homework before you get started writing. Okay, without further ado, I'd now like to walk through this wonderful webpage that we have, and big shout out to Angelique and Shannon. Thank you so much for getting this up. So I'm going to start sharing my screen now. And I can see, wonderful, and other folks can see our advisory board proposal page. So at the very top of it, we have this super helpful box, and it's just quick and dirty, right? So it draws your attention straight in. We intentionally put how to submit a proposal at the very top, since that's the part of the process that we're in. If you wanted to take a look at what those resources that we've been talking about are, you'll notice we have the data and tools forms in Spanish and in English, that rubric we just talked about, this timeline. I just broke this out for you, or I voiced it over for you, but if you were particularly interested in data and tools versus community engagement, again, 2 different boards, 2 different timelines, you can find either one here. And then we have community engagement, their proposal form in English and in Spanish. And then this is something, this last thing here, questions and answers from the June 6th advisory board meeting. This is something that came up the last time that our advisory boards met together, their last summer meeting. Our members had mentioned it would be a great idea to have some FAQs up. And so please take a look at that. Again, this may be very helpful for you as you're submitting your proposal. The proposal tracker, there's more down below, but basically if you were particularly interested in a 2023-24 proposal, you could track the progress of it. And so we'll walk through that in a second. And then this proposal archive that we had talked about. So when we get forms in from the public, you all this year, we'll house them here, as well as anything we get in from members. So this is just a quick glance at the top, but we're going to dig into all this information down here. So this graphic should look familiar to you, a breakdown of the 2 advisory boards. This proposal timing, I voiced this over, but again, you have it here at your disposal. These are all the milestones. So should you want to refer to it again, you have it all here. How to submit a proposal, it breaks it down, where to send that information to. That proposal tracker, right? So last year we got a total of 7 data and tools proposals and 1 community engagement proposal. So this is broken down by the member that submitted it, and it provides where it is in the process. So as we know, we just had the March meeting, excuse me, and our 3 proposals that did advance in the fall, they all are going for consideration at our May 1 governing board meeting. Something different that we'll be doing next year is they won't be housed by the member's last name, right? Because now it's open to the public. So that title that you provide to us, instead of seeing Curry Nunez proposal, you would see whatever your proposal title is. So that's something new that will be coming in the new year. So this proposal tracker, this takes us through the 2023-24 proposal season that we're wrapping up shortly. And then we have the proposal archive. So If helpful to voice over, I had mentioned we got 7 proposals in, and you'll notice here, all 7 are listed, plus Curry Nunez, that makes a total of 8. So we have all proposals that we've ever received here on our website. All right, that's enough from me. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I would love to pass it off to David, who will walk us through the next part of our presentation here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate. I will give a quick overview of what the feasibility study process looks like in terms of its purpose. And feasibility studies are an important type of pre-work that is done to make sure proposals can be successfully executed if approved, and challenges in their implementation are well documented. This work happens before the office commits material resources in its implementation and before C2C's advisory board and governing board vote on these matters. In general, a feasibility study looks at 4 distinct components of a proposal. I'm only going to go over data-related proposals today, but the process for community engagement proposals look quite similar. The first concept a feasibility study looks at is data availability. Does the data for the requested proposal exist? Second is questions of data validity and reliability. Is the data reported consistently, and can it be used for its proposed purpose? The third is cost. How much will it cost to execute and maintain this proposal? And finally, the last concern is compliance. Are there any legal implications or considerations that should be considered in implementing this proposal? I want to highlight that providing this information helps resolve ambiguities in proposals and better inform C2C's advisory and governing board in their decision-making. This is especially important as we open up the process to the public. Feasibility studies help concretize concepts and proposals into actionable items for evaluation. Next slide. And as we've talked about a little bit already, 4 proposals have undergone the feasibility study process. 3 of these proposals came from our data and tools board on adding new data points. These points referred to new topics in post-secondary persistence, college course taking, and A through G preparedness, and finally on high school completion outcomes. And we also had 1 proposal from our community engagement advisory board on adding student members to advisory boards. As we've mentioned, we're nearing the completion of our first cycle of feasibility studies, and we have learned a tremendous amount and are looking forward to implementing these learnings in the newest cycle. With that, I'm going to hand things off to my colleague Shannon Serrato to facilitate Q&A.
Thank you so much, Mary Kate and David. I really hope that this informational session was helpful to folks. Now we're going to open it up to members of the public to ask any questions that they may have following this presentation. So we have 3 questions in the Q&A that I hope that we can answer live. So just saying this out loud from Roy Tongalava, what were a few learnings from the first round of feasibility studies that could be helpful for public members considering a proposal? David, do you have any insight into that?
I think one thing that I can say is that there's a lot of terminology that is often used in very specific niches and contexts that might have a different interpretation from our office. So terms like dual enrollment can mean different things to different individuals and different institutions. So to the extent that you can provide information on context of what terms like that mean to you, I think is incredibly helpful in guiding the feasibility study process and making sure that we can get to an end result where everyone is going towards the intended goal.
Great, thank you. Adam asks, can links be included in the proposal forms? Mary Kate's nodding. Seems
Yes.
like a yes.
Please double check that your link works.
Okay, helpful guidance, but yes, links can be included. Thank you. And Sruti asks, are workforce development organizations in scope for Cradle-to-Career in terms of submitting employment outcomes data? If so, can a data and tools proposal involve improving data infrastructure for workforce organizations? Anybody? Oh,
Yeah.
looks like Ryan.
Yeah, I can weigh in on this. So just to make sure I understand the question is it is it allowable or is there a scenario where we submit a proposal that has to do with workforce related data points? And the short answer is yes, that like data points, looking at data points to add to the system is one of, I think, 3 types of proposals on the data and tools side. Which data points are requested can affect the feasibility study and in ways that are like you can predict beforehand. So just to make that a concrete example, EDD, for example, is a data partner, existing data partner sends data points into the system relating to wages and stuff. So looking at data points from an existing partner is sort of one version of that. Looking at data points from a data partner, a agency who is not an existing data partner would mean a whole other level of feasibility. So the longer answer is not all kinds of requests like that will have feasibilities that look the same and sort of entails different, different levels of ask. And that's good to know, I think, before in terms of, especially when we get to the point where we're looking at the rubric that the advisory boards use and looking at likelihood of feasibility. But we have many examples of ideas and proposals from last year that look at data points from existing partners. I think we have yet to receive one that is from a partner, that agency who is not a partner. So short answer, yes. Longer answer, it affects feasibility in the way that we do the feasibility studies. David, do you have more to add to that?
No, I think the only thing I'd say is that everything is sort of judged and evaluated on a case by case basis. So it really does depend on what the specific ask is.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. C2C's Director of Data Programs, for joining us and giving us that thorough answer. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And we've got one final question in the Q&A. Feel free to ask any more, but this is the last one in the queue for now from Shelley. Will the analysis of rubric and feasibility study outcomes be made public so future proposals can be refined and improved based on that information?
Everything's already live. So if you go back to, and happy to provide some links here, but if you would be interested in the feasibility studies findings from data and tools, I can be corrected. I think that's agenda item 5. If you go to our March meeting, and then for community engagement, I believe that was also agenda item 5. So feasibility studies are live on our website. And then the agenda item 7 for both talks through rubric changes. Is that helpful in what you're looking for?
Shelley can let us know, but thank you for that. If we haven't answered your question, Shelley, she says kind of. So if there's more clarity that we can provide, just let us know. We did get one more question in the chat, so maybe Shelley wants to elaborate more on what would be more helpful. We can answer that. But Ludovica says, apologies if I missed this. Would a research proposal, so requesting data access, be considered feasibility studies, or would those be accepted only at later stages?
Go ahead, David.
So we have for researchers who wish to access C2C's, the P20W dataset, we are currently in the process of building out the application process, as well as figuring out all of the necessary governance structure for that. So this is a very distinct process from the feasibility study process, and that research request process is still in development.
Great, thank you. And just to clarify, Shelley said it would be helpful not to have this information only in the agendas. And could you append or link the rubric and feasibility outcomes for the proposal information? Angelique has dropped in feasibility findings from both DTAB and CEAB, which I hope is helpful. And I hear you. It might be helpful to surface this similarly to some of our other resources. So we appreciate that feedback and we will look into this. Okay. Any final questions? We've got a couple more minutes. All right. Well, thank you. We really appreciate you all joining us today. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, as always, you can email us at info@c2c.ca.gov. That is a one-stop email to reach all C2C staff, so we encourage folks to use that. And also recordings of today's session, as asked earlier, will be made available on the community conversations pages. So I wanted to let you know that. And then finally, I want to give a plug. Next month, we will be having a community conversation on the advisory board selection process on May 7th. So every year, a third of C2C's advisory board members cycle off. And so we will be opening up a community conversation to share information about the application process, going over resources available, the form and rubric, social media toolkits. All of our materials will be available in Spanish this year. So just want to make sure that we highlight those resources. And then again, give you all an opportunity to ask any questions that you may have. So look forward to an email coming from C2C in the coming days with a registration link, and want to thank you for that. And finally, I'm just going to look in the chat again because it looks like we've got some feedback. We've got some thank yous, no questions. So I appreciate you all. And with that, I think we're going to end today's session, but really appreciate you joining us on this as we embark on this very first proposal process for the public. And again, we look forward to your feedback. And we really hope that you submit a proposal. And as always, reach out to us with anything that you may have. And otherwise, we hope that you have a great rest of your Tuesday. So thank you.